listening to the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. 6 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. Our third hour begins with Pope Francis in charge of the Catholic world. How does the Taliban work? It's a lousy segue, but how does the Taliban work? Well, the Taliban works by keeping people stupid. You know, women are witches, Jews are another species, Westerners are degenerate. Only the wise and powerful Taliban leaders know what the Quran really says because they're the only ones who can read, write, or tell everybody else what's real. Now, there was a time when the Muslim world was enlightened. They invented the writing and math, for example, that we use today. They were the center of the world for science. But then in some places, the Taliban took over. And don't for a minute think it's really all about religion. Religion is just used to manipulate the useful idiots. It's really about money, power, and control. And that can only be held by thugs like the Taliban when the people are kept poor and stupid. Here in America, there's a new Taliban rising. They fetishize guns, just like the Afghan Taliban. They fear women. They hate education. They want to destroy schools. They want to keep the people stupid and in chains. Our American Taliban? They're the plutocrats and the billionaires who rose to power on the heels of Reagan's trickle-down economics. And now what's trickling down to us is stupidity. As Mark Morford wrote for the San Francisco Chronicle's blog SF Gate, 6% of Americans believe in unicorns. 36% believe in UFOs. A whopping 24% believe dinosaurs and men hung out together. 18% still believe the sun revolves around the earth. Nearly 30% of Americans believe cloud computing involves actual clouds. A shockingly sad 18% to this very day believe the president is a Muslim. Do you believe in angels? 45% of Americans do. In fact, roughly 48%, Republicans and Democrats alike, believe in some form of creationism. End of quote. So why do Americans believe in such absurd things? Well, I suppose some are debatable, but because they're being taught these things in our nation's schools and hearing them from our corporatized media. All across America, our kids are learning from the curriculum of the plutocrats and billionaires, and it's getting worse. In Louisiana, for example, and in Indiana, children learn about how hippies were dirty, rock musicians worship Satan, and climate change is one big lie. But America's new Taliban isn't just controlling what's being taught in our classrooms. They're also dictating what's being shown in America's billionaire-backed, corporatized media. That's where the likes of Rupert Murdoch come in. Thanks to Murdoch, millions of Americans are subjected to the mountains of misinformation and half-truths that pour out of Fox so-called news on a daily basis. There used to be a time in our country when the mainstream media actually had to report on the news. Those times have changed. In 1986, Ronald Reagan ended the FCC doctrine that required radio and TV stations to actually carry real news as a public service, and within 2 years, the money-losing news services had come under network entertainment divisions, and all news decisions since then have been made based on ratings. Oh, and the following year, Rush Limbaugh started his radio show. And now plutocrat extraordinaires, the Koch brothers, are looking to buy several major American newspapers, presumably so they can have something to say about what Americans read in their morning papers. The Kochtopus is interested in buying the Tribune Company newspapers, which includes the Chicago Tribune, the Baltimore Sun, and the Los Angeles Times. According to the Hollywood Reporter, the Kochtopus is, quote, interested in the clout they could gain through the Times editorial pages, end quote. Now, I can talk about all of this openly here because most of the people who will vote for the new American Taliban don't bother to inform themselves with the real news. They don't engage in critical thinking, and they don't want to know what's really going on in the world. They love their ignorance, their bigotry, and most of all, their Fox so-called news. From Thomas Jefferson to John Kennedy. This is why I was listening to Kennedy clips this morning. I know there's a brilliant one out there. I couldn't find it in time for this, but From Thomas Jefferson to John Kennedy, we have always, as a nation, held high the ideal of a quality education for everybody. As Jefferson wrote in a letter to George Wythe, his mentor in 1786, I think by far, actually it's pronounced George Wythe, excuse me, I think by far the most important bill in our whole code is that for the diffusion of knowledge among the people. No other sure foundation can be devised for the preservation of freedom and happiness. Preach, my dear sir, a crusade against ignorance. Establish and improve the law for educating the common people. End of quote from Thomas Jefferson. Today, America faces a choice. We can hand our country over to the new Taliban and watch as the plutocrats and the billionaires consolidate ever more wealth, power, and control over information in this country. Or we can break up the big corporations and fight for a progressive America where there is a universal, high-quality education for all, a strong social safety net, and a broad and strong middle class. This choice looms large in the current budget debate. Are you paying attention to this? The Republicans, in their budget, Paul Ryan, he's the head of the budget committee, but, this is John Boehner. This is all the Republicans' budget. This is, if there's an R after the name, this is their budget. Cuts funding to education, voucherizes Medicare, slashes the social safety net, cuts taxes on rich people from a top marginal tax rate of 39% down to 25%, and raises taxes on poor people and the middle class, making the rich richer and the poor poorer, and the middle class poorer. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party's budget requires the rich to pay something a little bit closer to their fair share and uses those funds to strengthen education, the social safety net, and the middle class. So, America, it's up to you. Your choice. Do you want the billionaire-backed Republican Taliban in control? Or a democratic America, where unicorns and dinosaurs are only talked about in children's fantasy books? Because I'm not making this up. In Louisiana and Indiana right now, and probably other states, state dollars, federal education dollars, state education dollars are being given via the voucher process from these right-wing wackadoodle governors to private schools or corporate schools for the education of our school children, and they are teaching that, yes, there were fire-breathing dragons. Think about that for a minute. Yes, there were humans and dinosaurs at the same time. Now, just in case, you missed this part of fourth grade, or you went to one of those privatized schools. The dinosaurs were wiped out 65 million years ago at the end of the Jurassic when a giant meteorite, in all probability, struck the area around Cancun and created a global warming scenario so severe it wiped out about 65% of all life, including the dinosaurs. 65 million years ago. The most complex and fancy mammal at the time was a little tiny thing that preceded the lemurs, however you say it. Humans, we, us, Homo sapiens sapiens, we came about 165,000 years ago. Not 65 million years ago, 165,000 years ago, which means that there was roughly a 64,900,000 year difference between the dinosaurs and us. But forget about 64 million years. Textbooks in Louisiana and Indiana can't differentiate between the two. Sure enough, humans hung out with dinosaurs. Had to be, right? It says so in the Bible, and it doesn't even say so in the Bible. In the 19th century, some right-wing wackadoodle preacher, Protestant preacher, came up with this idea that the world was 6,000 years old. It's really, the idea is only a couple hundred years old.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So which side are you on? The billionaire Taliban or American democracy?